My son shouted, "You're not leaving this house." He took my phone from my hand so fast I barely felt it leave my fingers. Then I heard the lock turn. The sound was small, mechanical, almost polite, but it echoed louder than any scream. He thought I was powerless. He thought I had no way out. And by the next morning, while he was halfway to his weekend trip with wife Brianna Caldwell and her mother Patricia Green, he would realize something very important. He had locked the wrong woman inside. If you're listening tonight, tell me where you're from. I want to know who's here with me before I tell you how a son can look at his own mother and see nothing but inconvenience. Please subscribe to my channel for more stories like this. My name is Marian Caldwell. I'm 67 years old, a widow. I raised my son, Ethan Caldwell, mostly alone after my husband, David Caldwell, passed away 12 years ago. And until recently, I believed I had done it well. The night Ethan locked me inside the house didn't begin with shouting. It began with a document. I had asked him to come over that afternoon, just him, not Brianna. Not Patricia Green, her ever-present mother who seemed to float into every decision Ethan made like perfume that lingered too long. But of course, he didn't come alone. They arrived together. Brianna stepped inside first, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors David and I had refinished with our own hands decades ago. Patricia followed behind her, wearing a thin smile that never quite reached her eyes. Ethan came last. He didn't look at me when he walked in. That was the first sign. We sat in the living room, my living room, the one I had decorated slowly over 40 years. The one David and I had chosen piece by piece. I met with attorney James Whitmore this week, I said calmly. Ethan stiffened. Brianna's posture changed almost invisibly, alert. And, she asked before he could, and I updated my will. Silence. The air changed in that room. Not dramatic, just tighter. Ethan finally looked at me. Updated how? I folded my hands in my lap. I decided not to make you the sole beneficiary anymore. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't a threat. It was information. Patricia inhaled softly through her nose. Brianna leaned back slightly, studying me like a puzzle she had miscalculated. What do you mean not sole? Ethan asked, his voice already sharpening. I mean, I said evenly, that I have structured things differently. Portions will go to charitable foundations David cared about, some to community programs, and a trust has been created. For who? Brianna asked. For me, I replied. That's when the temperature truly shifted. Ethan stood abruptly. So this is about money now, he snapped. No, I said gently, this is about security. You don't trust us? Brianna's tone carried offense so polished it almost sounded sincere. I trust patterns, I answered. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, pacing once. You're overreacting. No one is trying to take anything from you. No, I asked quietly. Because last week you asked me to transfer the deed into joint ownership. His jaw tightened. That was practical. It was permanent. Brianna crossed her legs, voice cool. We're just trying to help you manage things before it becomes too much. Too much. At 67, I felt something settle inside me then. Clarity. I am not incapable, I said calmly. Ethan laughed once, sharp, humorless. This is ridiculous. What is? I asked. You acting like we're criminals. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Patricia finally spoke, her tone syrupy. Marian, dear, families don't treat each other like adversaries. No, I agreed softly. They don't. The irony hovered there. Ethan stopped pacing and looked directly at me. If you think we're after your house, just say it. I think, I said carefully, that urgency around my assets has increased lately. Brianna's composure cracked slightly. That's insulting? No, I replied. It's observant. The silence that followed wasn't loud, it was cold. Ethan stepped closer. You're making a mistake. Possibly, I said. But it will be my mistake. That was when something changed in his eyes. Frustration gave way to something harder. You're not thinking clearly, he said. I am. No, you're paranoid. I'm prepared. His breathing grew heavier. I watched the shift happen in real time, the moment he realized persuasion wasn't working. You know what? He said suddenly. Fine, if you want to act unstable, maybe you need time to cool down. I am perfectly calm. That's the problem. He moved toward the hallway table where my phone rested. Before I fully understood what he was doing, he picked it up. Ethan, I said quietly. He slipped it into his jacket pocket. What are you doing? You're not calling anyone tonight, he replied. Brianna didn't stop him. Patricia didn't look surprised. You're overreacting, I said. No, he snapped. You are. He walked to the front door. Ethan. He turned back toward me. You're not leaving this house, he said, not yelling yet, just controlled. This is my house. Exactly, he replied, and then he opened the door. Where are you going? I asked. Weekend trip, Brianna answered lightly. We'll talk when we get back. Ethan stepped outside. The door closed, then I heard it. The click of the lock turning from the outside. A pause, and then the sound of their car starting. I stood in the hallway alone. My own son had just locked me inside my own home, not in panic, not in rage, in calculation. I walked slowly to the door and tried the handle. Locked. I moved to the kitchen window, too narrow. Back door, deadbolt engaged. I stood there for a moment, breathing, feeling the weight of it settle over me. This was not an accident. This was not emotional impulse. This was coercion. And that was the moment Ethan Caldwell made the biggest mistake of his life. Because while he believed he had just removed my options, he had forgotten something very simple. I stopped being naive months ago. Upstairs, beneath a loose floorboard in my bedroom, was something he didn't know existed. And by the next morning, he would receive a message he never expected to see, not from a frightened mother, but from a woman who had already prepared for this exact night. And when his phone buzzed halfway through his trip with Brianna and Patricia, everything would change. The first night after Ethan locked the door behind him, I did not scream. That's what they expected, that I would panic, that I would pound on the door, that I would collapse into helplessness. Instead, I stood very still in the center of my living room. The silence in the house was not new to me. After David passed, silence had become a familiar companion, but this silence was different. It wasn't grief. It was insult. Ethan had shouted, "You're not leaving this house." Then he took my phone from the kitchen counter, slipped it into his jacket, and locked the front door from the outside before leaving for a weekend trip with Brianna and her mother, Patricia Green. They thought they were teaching me a lesson. They thought I had no way out. They were wrong. I walked to the front door and tested the knob again. Locked. The deadbolt had been engaged from the outside. Ethan had changed it last month for security. Security from whom? Apparently from me. I moved slowly through the house thinking, I am 67 years old, widowed, composed, observant, and underestimated. Ethan has always underestimated me. When David was alive, Ethan listened. Not always obedient, but respectful. After David's death, something shifted. Brianna's voice became louder in our household. Softer in tone, sharper in intent. Boundaries, she used to say. Independence. Healthy space. Words that sounded modern and reasonable until they became weapons. 3 months ago, Brianna suggested Ethan help manage my finances so I wouldn't be overwhelmed. Last month, Patricia Green gently remarked over tea that older people sometimes make impulsive decisions. Last week, Ethan told me I should consider signing power of attorney just in case. And yesterday, he locked me inside my own house. Because I refused, I walked into the kitchen and opened the drawer beneath the sink. Ethan had taken my primary phone, but he had forgotten something. David, my late husband, had been a cautious man, prepared, quietly strategic. Before he died, he insisted we keep a backup phone, prepaid, basic, charged once a month and kept hidden for emergencies. I had rolled my eyes at the time. Now I whispered, "Thank you, David." The phone was still there. I turned it on. Battery 86%. Enough. I did not call Ethan. I did not call Brianna. I called Officer Ramirez. He had once come to the house last year after a minor dispute between Ethan and a contractor turned loud. He had left his card on the counter and said, "If you ever feel unsafe, call." I dialed. He answered on the third ring. "Officer Ramirez, this is Marion Caldwell." A pause. "Yes, Mrs. Caldwell. My son has locked me inside my own house and taken my primary phone." Silence. Then his voice sharpened. "Are you in immediate danger? No. Are you injured? No. Do you want an officer dispatched? Yes." Within 20 minutes, a patrol car pulled up outside. Ethan had locked the front door, but he had not considered the back gate, or that I still possessed a key to the side shed which led to the yard. Officer Ramirez walked in through the backyard with my help. He looked around calmly, professionally. "Did he threaten you physically?" he asked. "No, but he confiscated my phone and restricted my movement." "That qualifies as unlawful restraint," he said quietly. I nodded. "I don't want to escalate recklessly," I told him. But I want documentation. He studied me carefully. You're certain? Yes. He took notes, photographs of the locked exterior bolt, statements. Do you wish to press charges? Not yet. He didn't argue. Instead, he handed me a copy of the incident report number. If he does this again, call immediately. I will. After he left, I sat in the living room and waited. I did not break the lock. I did not flee. I waited. At 8:42 p.m., my hidden phone vibrated. Unknown number, I answered. Mrs. Caldwell? A calm voice asked. This is she, Attorney James Whitmore. I allowed myself a small smile. I received your message earlier this week, he continued. You said you were concerned about potential coercion regarding estate documents. Yes, I have prepared updated materials as discussed. Good, would you like to finalize? Yes. Tomorrow morning? No, I said quietly. Tonight? There was a pause. I understand. Within an hour, Attorney James Whitmore arrived discreetly through the back entrance. Helen Brooks, my neighbor, observant, steady Helen, also came over when I texted her from the backup phone. I need a witness, I told her. Helen did not ask questions. She simply nodded. At my dining table, under the same chandelier David installed 20 years ago, I signed new documents. Every page, every clause. Attorney Whitmore explained carefully, ensuring clarity and mental competence. You are doing this voluntarily? Yes. You understand the changes? Completely. Helen signed as witness. I felt no rage, only clarity. When it was done, Attorney Whitmore placed the original copies into his leather briefcase. These will be filed first thing Monday morning, he said. Good. He paused before leaving. Mrs. Caldwell, if you anticipate further control attempts, we can take additional measures. I anticipate escalation, I said calmly. He nodded. I will be prepared. After everyone left, I locked the doors from the inside. I slept deeply. The next morning at 10:17 a.m., Ethan's car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the kitchen window. He walked to the front door and unlocked it from the outside, confident. He stepped inside, laughing. See, Mom, that wasn't so bad. You just needed time to cool off. Brianna followed behind him, sunglasses perched perfectly, expression composed. Patricia Green trailed last, evaluating the house as though assessing resale value. Then Ethan saw me, standing calmly, coffee in hand. You got out? He asked, confused. I was never trapped, I replied. His eyes moved to the kitchen counter. My phone, he demanded, is irrelevant. Brianna narrowed her gaze slightly. You called someone, she said softly. Yes. Patricia Green stiffened almost imperceptibly. Who? Ethan snapped. Officer Ramirez. The silence hit hard. You called the police? Ethan's face flushed red. I documented unlawful restraint. You're exaggerating? No, I said calmly. I am defining. Brianna stepped forward. Marion, we were trying to protect you. From what? From impulsive decisions. I made a decision last night, I replied evenly. Ethan's jaw tightened. What decision? The kind you can't reverse. Patricia Green spoke for the first time. You wouldn't. I met her gaze directly. I already did. Ethan took a step closer, anger rising. You think you can threaten us? I don't threaten, I said softly. I prepare. Brianna's composure cracked slightly. What exactly did you do? I set my coffee down. I ensured that no one can ever control my movement, my property, or my estate without consequences. Ethan stared at me as if seeing someone unfamiliar. You've changed. No, I said. I stopped tolerating. Silence filled the room, heavy, real. And for the first time since David's death, I was not the vulnerable widow they thought they could corner. I was Marion Caldwell. And the message Ethan thought I couldn't send. He had already received it, without even checking his phone. Ethan did not yell immediately. That surprised me. He stood in the center of the living room, breathing hard, his hands opening and closing like he was trying to hold onto something that was already slipping away. Brianna recovered first. She always did. Marion, she said smoothly, stepping slightly in front of Ethan, let's not turn this into something dramatic. Dramatic, it was always that word. When I questioned a decision, dramatic. When I refused a suggestion, dramatic. When I defended myself, dramatic. I did not lock myself inside my own house, I replied evenly. That part was quite literal. Patricia Green placed her handbag on the console table as if she planned to stay a while. We all acted emotionally yesterday, she said in that socially polished tone she wore like perfume. Let's de-escalate. Officer Ramirez's card sat on the side table where I had intentionally left it. Patricia noticed. Her eyes flickered to it for half a second. She understood. Ethan noticed her glance. His posture shifted. You filed a report? He asked, his voice lower now. I documented what happened. You're trying to get me arrested. No, I said calmly. You accomplished that risk on your own. Brianna's jaw tightened. This is ridiculous, she said. You're punishing Ethan because we asked for basic structure. Basic structure does not involve confiscating phones. Patricia intervened again, controlled but firm. Marion, you must understand how this looks. An elderly woman claiming unlawful restraint by her own son, people will question your judgment. There it was, subtle, suggestive, undermining. I am 67, I said quietly. Not incompetent? No one said incompetent, Brianna replied quickly. You implied it 3 times last month, I answered. Ethan's head snapped toward her. What is she talking about? Brianna hesitated. She misinterprets things? No, I said, I record things. The room went still. Patricia's eyes sharpened. Record, she repeated carefully. Yes. Ethan stared at me. You've been recording us? In my own home, I replied. Yes, his face drained of color. Brianna's composure cracked for the first time. That's illegal. No, I said evenly. It is legal here to record conversations I am part of. Patricia straightened slowly. You've been building something, she said. I held her gaze. Yes. Ethan took a step back, suddenly uncertain. This is insane, he muttered. You're acting like we're criminals. You locked me inside my house, I reminded him. You were overreacting? You broke my right to leave. He raked a hand through his hair. We just needed space. You've been making impulsive decisions. About my own property? Yes, the word echoed. Brianna stepped in again, smoother now. This isn't about the lock, she said. It's about stability. You've been talking to lawyers. I have. You're planning something? I finalized something. Patricia inhaled sharply. What did you do? I walked to the bookshelf and retrieved a folder, not the original documents, a summary. I placed it gently on the coffee table. You wanted structure, I said. Here it is. Ethan flipped it open. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. His breathing changed. What is this? He whispered. A revised estate structure, I said calmly. Brianna moved closer, reading over his shoulder. Patricia remained very still. This says, Ethan swallowed. This says I'm no longer primary beneficiary. That is correct. Silence fell like a stone. Brianna's voice turned cold. You disinherited your own son? I redistributed my assets. To who? Ethan demanded. Multiple organizations, I replied, including a housing trust for widowed women. Patricia's mask slipped slightly. This is retaliation. No, I said softly, it is protection. You're being manipulated, Brianna snapped. By whom? By whoever convinced you were a threat. You convinced me, I answered. Ethan slammed the folder shut. You're destroying this family over pride? Pride, I repeated gently. You locked me inside my own home. You were being unreasonable. I was being independent. Brianna folded her arms. So what now? She asked. You're going to call the police every time we disagree? No, then what? I am setting terms. Patricia narrowed her eyes. What kind of terms? I sat down calmly. If you wish to remain in my life, it will be as adults who respect boundaries. Ethan laughed bitterly. You think this is some kind of business negotiation? No, I said. It is adulthood. You're humiliating me, he said. You humiliated yourself. Brianna stepped forward again, anger replacing polish. You're unstable, she said quietly. And if you continue making drastic financial decisions, we will have no choice but to question your capacity legally. There it was, the threat. Subtle but unmistakable. Ethan looked startled. Brianna, no, she continued, eyes locked on me. If Marion is making decisions that harm her own family based on emotional outbursts, we can petition for evaluation. Patricia didn't interrupt. That told me everything. I nodded slowly. Go ahead, Brianna blinked. What petition? Ethan looked between us. You'd fight your own son in court. I would defend my autonomy. Patricia exhaled slowly. You're willing to make this public? I already prepared for that possibility. Ethan's confidence wavered. What does that mean? It means Attorney James Whitmore is fully aware of yesterday's incident. Brianna went pale. You told your lawyer about the lock? Yes, and he advised me to document thoroughly. Patricia's voice dropped. You're building a case? I'm building security. Ethan's anger flared again. So you're planning to sue me? I am planning not to be cornered again. He paced the room. This is crazy. This is extreme. Locking your mother inside a house is extreme. Silence, heavy, real. Brianna tried a different approach. Marion, she said, softer now, almost conciliatory. We just want what's best for you. No, I replied. You want control. That's not fair. You tried to relocate me without my consent. Ethan's head snapped up. What? I looked at him steadily. You discussed assisted living options last week. His face turned toward Brianna. You said we were just researching. Brianna hesitated. We were preparing. For what? He demanded. For eventual necessity. I watched realization creep across Ethan's face. Without telling me, he asked her. It was strategic. Patricia finally spoke. Let's not fracture alliances here. Alliances, interesting word. Ethan looked suddenly unsure. You were going to move her, he asked. When the time was right, Brianna replied. I said nothing. Ethan turned back to me. You thought I agreed to that? I thought you deferred, I answered calmly. He stared at the floor. Patricia adjusted her posture, regaining control. Enough, she said firmly. This has escalated beyond reason. Yes, I agreed. Because control attempts always do. Brianna inhaled sharply. What do you want? She demanded. I already told you. Spell it out. I stood slowly. No more power of attorney conversations, no more financial oversight suggestions, no more relocation planning. And no more intimidation. Ethan looked exhausted. And if we don't agree, then distance will become permanent. Silence filled the house. For the first time since David died, they were not looking at a fragile widow. They were looking at a woman who had prepared. Brianna's voice dropped into something colder. You think you've won? This isn't about winning, I said quietly. It's about not losing myself. Patricia picked up her handbag. We should go. Ethan didn't move. He looked at me as if seeing something unfamiliar. You really would let this end, he said. It already almost did. Brianna turned toward the door. We're not done, she said. No, I replied calmly. But I am ready. They left without slamming the door, which told me something important. They were recalculating, and recalculating people are more dangerous than angry ones. I walked to the window and watched their car pull away. Helen Brooks appeared at the fence line moments later. She had been gardening, listening. She met my eyes. I nodded once. She nodded back. No words needed. Inside, the house felt different. Not tense, fortified, but I knew something else too. Ethan's ego was wounded. Brianna's strategy was threatened. Patricia's influence was exposed. And wounded pride rarely retreats quietly, which meant one thing: the real confrontation had not happened yet. The quiet after they left did not feel peaceful. It felt strategic. People like Brianna did not retreat because they were defeated. They retreated because they were planning. 2 days passed without a word from Ethan. No texts, no calls. No passive-aggressive emails disguised as checking in. That silence told me more than anger ever could. On the third morning, Helen Brooks knocked gently on my door. I saw a courier van outside yesterday, she said as she stepped in. It stopped here. I hadn't been home. I had been at Attorney James Whitmore's office reviewing updated documentation. There was an envelope in my mailbox, I said quietly. Helen's expression tightened. What kind? Certified? She exhaled slowly. That kind. I retrieved the envelope from the desk drawer, unopened. I already knew what it was, but knowing and seeing are different things. I slid it open carefully. Petition for capacity evaluation. Filed by Ethan Caldwell, supported by affidavit from Brianna Caldwell, and signed witness statement from Patricia Green. Helen's jaw clenched. They're trying to declare you incompetent? Yes. The word did not shake, it settled, because I had anticipated this. Brianna had telegraphed it during our last confrontation. You're not upset? Helen asked. I am not surprised. The petition claimed sudden financial restructuring, erratic hostility, paranoia regarding control, documenting family interactions obsessively. Helen looked furious. Documenting abuse is paranoia now? To them, I said calmly, it is. The petition requested court-appointed review and temporary financial oversight pending evaluation, which meant one thing clearly: they wanted leverage. If I were deemed temporarily impaired, they could freeze transactions, delay my estate changes, possibly reassert influence. I folded the paper neatly. They escalated, Helen said. Yes, and now I respond. That afternoon, I called attorney James Whitmore. He answered on the second ring. I was expecting this, he said before I even finished explaining. So was I. They filed quickly, he noted. That was the plan. He paused. Marian, this is not uncommon when adult children feel financially displaced. Displaced, such a gentle word for threatened. What do we do? I asked. We do nothing emotionally, he replied. We respond structurally? He outlined the steps: immediate voluntary cognitive evaluation by independent neurologist, financial competency affidavit, submission of recorded evidence of coercive behavior, formal response to court challenging temporary oversight request. You're calm, he observed. I prepared for this. That will matter. 2 days later, I sat in a quiet medical office across from a neurologist who asked me to recall sequences, interpret patterns, solve logic problems. I answered each with steady precision. He asked me to explain why my son filed the petition. Because I withdrew financial inheritance, I said evenly. And how does that make you feel? Clear. He studied me carefully. Do you feel anger toward him? I feel disappointment. And caution? He nodded slowly. 3 hours later, I left with a written cognitive affirmation. No impairment, no instability, no diminished capacity. Just a 67-year-old widow who had decided to stop being underestimated. When I returned home, there was a car in my driveway. Ethan stood on the porch. Alone. He looked tired, older than 33. I stepped out of my car slowly. You filed paperwork, I said calmly. You forced my hand, he replied. Interesting, accountability reframed as coercion. You tried to declare me incompetent. You've been acting extreme. Defending my property is extreme. You disinherited me. I redistributed assets. You did it out of spite. No, I said evenly. I did it out of clarity. He stepped closer. You're humiliating me. You locked me inside this house. That was one moment. It was one moment too many. He ran his hands through his hair. You think I wanted this? You signed it. I thought you were unstable. Based on what? Based on how cold you've become. Cold. Women are always cold when they stop surrendering. I stopped being compliant, I corrected. He exhaled sharply. Brianna says, there it is, I said quietly. He froze. You don't even see it, I continued. You never have. He looked confused. See what? That your decisions have not been your own for years. That's not fair, isn't it? He hesitated. You're isolating me? No, I replied. You isolated yourself. Silence stretched between us. I withdrew the petition, he said finally. I blinked once. You did, not yet, he corrected, but I will. Why? He swallowed. Because Whitmore called Brianna. That made sense. Attorney James Whitmore was measured but not passive. And, I asked, and he mentioned the recordings. The air shifted. You told him about those? Ethan asked. Yes, what recordings? The ones where Brianna and Patricia discussed assisted living placement without informing you. His face went pale. She wouldn't, she did. He stepped back as if physically struck. She told me it was hypothetical. It was strategic. He stared at the ground. For the first time, he looked less entitled and more shaken. Did she really? He began but didn't finish. Yes. He was quiet for a long time. I didn't know, he said finally. I know. That stunned him. You know? Yes. His voice dropped. Then why didn't you tell me? Because you weren't ready to hear it. Silence. I didn't think you'd fight, he admitted. That was your mistake, he laughed weakly. Yeah. The wind moved through the trees. The house stood solid behind me. I don't want to fight you, he said. Then stop trying to control me. He hesitated. Brianna thinks you're being manipulated by outsiders. I am being advised, I corrected. That's not the same, isn't it? No, he said quietly. It's not. For the first time in years, he wasn't parroting someone else's tone. He was thinking. I'll withdraw the petition, he repeated. You will do so formally, I said. Yes. And you will never attempt to question my capacity again. His jaw tightened. Unless, no, he stopped. You don't get conditional control, he nodded slowly. Okay, I studied him. You're afraid, I said quietly. Of what? Of losing security. He didn't deny it. This house was part of my future, he admitted. It still can be. His head snapped up. What if respect returns? He blinked. You'd reverse it? No, I said calmly, but I would consider proportional inclusion. He looked confused. I don't understand. I am not punishing you, I explained. I am restructuring power. He absorbed that slowly. And Brianna, he asked, that is your choice. His face tightened. She'll fight this, then decide who you are. That hit harder than any accusation. He looked at the front door, at the porch, at the place he once ran up as a child. I didn't mean to become like this, he said quietly. Intent and impact are different things. He nodded. I'll call Whitmore. Good. He turned to leave. Ethan, he paused. If you escalate again, I said softly, I will not respond privately next time. His eyes widened. You'd go public? Yes, he believed me, that mattered. He got into his car and drove away. I stood on the porch for a long time, not victorious, not emotional, just steady. Inside, I called attorney James Whitmore. He's withdrawing, I said. Good, he replied. But this won't end quietly, will it? No, he said honestly. Brianna will likely pivot. Pivot, yes, strategists do not surrender, they adapt. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Helen stepped onto her side of the fence. Well, she asked gently. He's shaken, I said, and her. Preparing. Helen nodded. Do you regret any of it? I looked at my house. At the windows David Caldwell once painted himself. At the garden he planted. At the door Ethan had once slammed as a teenager. No, I said softly. I regret waiting this long. Helen smiled faintly. Then you're exactly where you need to be. But as night settled in, one thought lingered. Brianna Caldwell had not yet spoken. And women who lose financial leverage rarely retreat quietly. Which meant Brianna Caldwell did not call, she did not text. She did not show up at my door with polite smiles or thinly veiled accusations. She waited, and that told me everything. Women like Brianna do not react from emotion. They react from strategy. 3 days after Ethan withdrew the petition, an unfamiliar car pulled into my driveway just after noon. Black sedan, polished, intentional. Patricia Green stepped out first, of course she did. She wore cream linen and oversized sunglasses, as if arriving for brunch instead of confrontation. Brianna followed, controlled as ever, phone in hand, posture straight, expression unreadable. Helen Brooks, who had been trimming roses next door, glanced toward my house. I gave her the slightest nod. She remained where she was. Witnesses matter. I opened the door before they knocked. Marion, Patricia said smoothly. We thought it was time for a civil conversation. I prefer documentation to civility, I replied calmly. But come in. They entered without hesitation. Brianna did not sit. She scanned the room, assessing, measuring, calculating. You embarrassed us, she said finally. No, I corrected. You exposed yourselves. Her jaw tightened. You recorded private discussions. In my home, you manipulated Ethan. I clarified reality. Patricia exhaled lightly, stepping forward. Let's lower the temperature, she said. This isn't productive. No, I agreed. It isn't, but it is accurate. Brianna crossed her arms. You blindsided him with the inheritance shift. He blindsided me with legal action. That was defensive. That was coercive. Silence thickened. Patricia tried again. Surely we can agree this has gone too far. I agree, I said calmly. You took it too far. Brianna's composure slipped for half a second. You think you're untouchable because you have paperwork and recordings. I am protected because I have boundaries. That's not the same thing. It is to me. She stepped closer. You're isolating Ethan. I am refusing to subsidize him. He's your son. He is an adult. And family supports each other. Yes, I said softly, they do. The weight of that hung between us. Patricia shifted tactics. What exactly do you want, Marion? Respect. But that word felt too small now. I want autonomy without interference, I said evenly. I want no further attempts to override my decisions. I want no manipulation disguised as concern. Brianna laughed once sharp. You're dramatic. I'm prepared. She studied me. You're not afraid of losing him. I held her gaze. I already did. That landed. Patricia's tone softened. You must understand, Marion, security matters. Ethan built his future assuming stability. Stability based on assumption is not stability, I replied. Brianna's eyes flashed. You're destabilizing our family? I'm stabilizing myself. You could have discussed adjustments quietly. You could have respected my property quietly. The room fell still. Patricia removed her sunglasses slowly. What would it take, she asked carefully, for you to reconsider inclusion? There it was, the core question: money, not reconciliation, not healing, inclusion. You're negotiating inheritance like a contract, I said. Because it is. No, I corrected. It's earned. Brianna's voice lowered. You think we're greedy. I think you became entitled. And you're not controlling. I am controlling my own assets. Her nostrils flared slightly. We built plans around this house. You built fantasies. You knew that. Yes, I said calmly, and I let you. Patricia studied me closely. What changed? I didn't hesitate. The day he locked the door. The silence after that was heavy. Brianna's expression hardened. You're still exaggerating that moment. He removed my phone. You were hysterical. I was resolute. He was trying to calm you. He was trying to intimidate me. Her composure cracked for a breath. You're twisting it. No, I'm remembering it. Patricia intervened again. This isn't about that one incident. It is, I said softly, because it revealed everything. Brianna's voice dropped. You're punishing him. No. I'm teaching him. She stared at me. You think you're winning. I think I'm done losing. For a moment, no one moved. Then Patricia changed direction entirely. What if Ethan moves out? She asked. The shift was sharp. Then he moves out, and the house remains mine. You'd be alone. I am not alone. I thought of Helen, of attorney James Whitmore, of Officer Ramirez, who had treated me with more respect than my own son. Brianna's eyes narrowed. You've turned outsiders against us. I've informed professionals. You made this legal. You made it coercive. Her patience thinned. Fine, she said coldly. Let's be clear. Finally, clarity. You've damaged our standing, she continued. The petition withdrawal looks suspicious. People talk. People should. You're willing to destroy your son's reputation. I'm willing to defend mine. And if we pursue a civil claim for defamation, based on what? Emotional instability accusations. Character damage, I smiled faintly. Proceed. Her eyes flickered, confidence, that unsettled her. Patricia's voice softened again. Marion, you were always reasonable. I was always accommodating. There's a difference? Yes, Brianna stepped toward the door. This isn't over, I know, she paused. You think Ethan sees through me now. I think he's thinking. And you think that's permanent? I think it's beginning. Her jaw tightened. He needs me, then don't make him choose. That struck deeper than she expected. She opened the door. Patricia lingered a second longer. You may win legally, she said quietly, but you may lose him entirely. I met her eyes. I would rather lose him honestly than keep him dishonestly. That ended it. They left. The black sedan pulled away smoothly. Helen appeared moments later, crossing the lawn. How did it go? They pivoted. And they're considering relocation. Helen blinked. They'd move out. If pressure remains. She folded her arms. Do you want that? I looked at my house, at the quiet porch. At the absence of slammed doors and whispered planning. Yes. That evening, Ethan called. His voice was tense. They came to see you? Yes. What did they say? They negotiated. For what? Inheritance leverage. He went silent. They shouldn't have done that, he muttered. No, she told me you're trying to separate us. I'm trying to separate control from dependency. He exhaled slowly. I didn't know she'd go that far. Now you do. A long pause. We might move, he said finally. I know. You'd be fine with that. I'd support it. He sounded unsettled. You really don't need us. I never needed control. The silence between us was different this time, less combative. More uncertain. I don't know what's happening anymore, he admitted. You're waking up, he swallowed. If we move, does that fix it? No, I said gently. It just changes the structure. And us? That depends on behavior. He was quiet for a long time. I didn't realize how much of this was about money. It always was. He didn't argue, that mattered. After the call ended, I sat in the quiet living room. The house felt different again, not sharper, not tense, lighter. But something still unsettled me. Brianna had not conceded. She had assessed. which meant her next move would not be emotional, it would be strategic. And women who prioritize image do not tolerate narrative loss. Which meant this was not over, it was evolving, and I would need to be one step ahead. Again. The for sale sign appeared on a Thursday morning. Not in my yard. In theirs. Ethan and Brianna's townhouse across town, purchased only 18 months earlier with dramatic enthusiasm and Patricia's very vocal approval, was now on the market. Helen Brooks was the one who told me. I saw it online, she said over tea at my kitchen table. Professional photos, staging, fast listing. I didn't react immediately. I simply folded my hands. So they're moving, she added carefully. Yes, I said, they are. But I knew Brianna well enough by now to understand something important. People like her don't retreat, they reposition. That evening, Ethan came alone, no Brianna. No Patricia, just my son, tired, unshaven, shoulders slightly bent as if carrying something heavier than pride. We listed the house, he said without sitting. I noticed. You always notice, he muttered. Yes, he walked slowly through the living room as if reacquainting himself with a space he had once taken for granted. We can't afford 2 legal messes and a mortgage, he admitted. After everything? After everything, I repeated calmly. He stopped pacing. I didn't realize how much we were building around assumptions. You built around expectations, I corrected. Same thing. No, expectations belong to others. Assumptions belong to you, he rubbed his forehead. She thinks you forced this. I didn't list the property. She says you destabilized us financially. I withdrew from subsidizing you. That's not how she sees it. That's not my responsibility. He exhaled slowly. You're different, yes. You don't react anymore. No, he studied me carefully. It's unsettling. It's stable. That landed. He sat down finally. We're moving into a rental for now. I hope it suits you, he hesitated. Are you glad? I considered that carefully. I am relieved, I said honestly. He nodded. That hurts. It's not meant to, but it does. Growth does. Silence settled between us, not hostile, not tender, just real. Then he said something that told me the shift wasn't superficial. Patricia told Brianna to push for mediation. With what goal? To negotiate partial reinstatement into the estate. There it was, still circling back to money. And I asked calmly. I said no. That was new. Why? Because it feels wrong now. I held his gaze. Explain, he swallowed. When I stepped back, really stepped back, I realized I never once asked what you wanted. I didn't speak. And that's not how you raised me. That almost moved me, almost. I raised you to be independent, I said quietly. I became entitled. Yes, he didn't argue. That basement, he continued softly, referring to the documentation I had once gathered. You were preparing to defend yourself long before we knew. I was preparing to survive. He nodded slowly. Brianna doesn't see it that way. She doesn't have to. She says you're dismantling our security. I dismantled leverage. He leaned back. She's angry. I know. She thinks you turned me against her. You turned yourself toward clarity. He gave a faint, humorless laugh. You always speak like that. Speak like what? Like you're 5 moves ahead. I am. He looked around the house. This place feels bigger now. It feels mine. Another silence. Then he asked the question that mattered. If we move, what happens between us? I didn't rush the answer. We rebuild slowly, I said, without financial expectation, without proximity dependence. And the will, it remains as written. He flinched slightly, but he didn't protest. That's permanent, it's conditional. His head lifted. Conditional how? Behavior over time. He processed that carefully. So there's a path. There is always a path. He nodded. I don't deserve one yet. That honesty surprised me. No, I agreed. You don't. He accepted that. That mattered more than apology. Later that week, I received a formal email from attorney James Whitmore. Subject line, protective confirmation filed. Inside was confirmation that additional safeguards had been placed on my estate documents, irrevocable trust structures that would require independent review if ever altered. I called him. You anticipated escalation, he said calmly. I anticipated desperation. And now I anticipate recalibration. He paused. You've handled this with restraint. I handled it with documentation. That too, he lowered his voice slightly. For what it's worth, Marion, many clients wait until irreparable harm occurs. I waited long enough. Yes, he agreed. After the call, I stepped outside. The afternoon light hit the windows differently lately. Less shadow, more stillness. Helen joined me at the fence. They're packing, she said quietly. I know. Does it feel final? No, I said. It feels transitional. Do you trust him? I considered that honestly. I trust that he's uncomfortable. That's something? Yes. 2 days later, Brianna came, alone. That surprised me more than the for sale sign. She stood at my door in a navy blazer, controlled, composed, eyes sharp but tired. I won't stay long, she said. Good, she didn't flinch. We're leaving the house next week. I'm aware, she studied me. You expected this. Yes, did you want it? I wanted clarity, and you got it. Yes, silence stretched between us. She didn't sit, she didn't posture, for once she didn't perform. You think I'm the villain, she said quietly. I think you prefer control. That's not a crime. No, you've always underestimated me. No, I corrected. You underestimated me? That stung. She exhaled. Ethan is questioning everything. He should. You've destabilized his confidence. I've stabilized his boundaries. She stepped closer. You're not afraid of losing him? I'm afraid of losing myself. That hung heavy. For the first time, her mask slipped, not anger, not superiority, fear. If he changes, she said carefully, you'll hold power over him. No, I replied calmly. He'll hold himself accountable. She studied me in a way she never had before. You don't want revenge. No, you want independence. Yes, and if he chooses me, then he chooses you. She blinked. That simple, yes. That unsettled her more than any confrontation ever had. You're not fighting me. I'm not competing. She looked around the house, this house she once mentally categorized as future equity. You really would let him walk away? I already did. She absorbed that slowly. You're stronger than I thought. I'm clearer than you expected. Another long pause, then she said something unexpected. I miscalculated. I didn't respond immediately. I assumed attachment would override assertion, she continued. It did, I said softly, for a long time. She nodded once. Goodbye, Marion. Goodbye, Brianna. She left without another word. No threats, no negotiations, no final play, just recalibration. The following week, moving trucks lined their driveway. Furniture disappeared. Curtains came down. By sunset, the house was empty. Ethan came by that evening, keys in hand. We're out. I know. He looked exhausted. Brianna thinks this is temporary. Is it? I don't know. He stood in the doorway longer than necessary. I'm not asking for money. I know. I'm not asking for reinstatement. I know. I'm asking for time. That, I said gently, you have. He stepped forward and hugged me, not dramatically, not desperately, just quietly. It had been years since his embrace felt uncalculated. When he stepped back, his eyes were wet but steady. I'm going to figure myself out, he said. I hope you do. He left without looking back. And for the first time in a very long time, the house was silent. Not tense, not sharp, not defensive, just quiet. I walked through every room slowly. No rehearsed conversations, no hidden leverage. No waiting for the next strategic move, only stillness. Helen texted one word later that night. Freedom? I replied, stability, because this was never about winning. It was about not being cornered in my own life. And now no one held the lock but me. The house settled into a rhythm I had not felt in years. Mornings were slower, not empty, just unoccupied by expectation. I woke when I wished. I made coffee without calculating who might need something from me. I sat by the window and let the light move across the hardwood floors without feeling watched or evaluated. For so long, even silence had felt observed. Now it felt earned. 2 weeks after Ethan and Brianna moved into their rental, I received a letter. Not an email, not a message. A physical envelope, from Ethan. The handwriting was uneven, like he hadn't written anything personal by hand in years. I let it sit on the kitchen table for a full hour before opening it, not out of fear, out of discipline. Inside was a single sheet, no drama, no apology soaked in desperation, just honesty. Mom, I've started therapy. Not because you demanded it, because I finally realized I don't know who I am without reacting to someone else. Brianna thinks this is weakness. Patricia thinks it's unnecessary. I think it's overdue. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to understand how I became someone who thought intimidation was acceptable. I'm ashamed of that night. I won't excuse it. Ethan, I read it twice, then a third time. The words weren't poetic. They weren't polished, but they weren't defensive either. That mattered. Helen Brooks arrived later that afternoon with fresh bread as she often did now. You look thoughtful, she said, setting the loaf on the counter. I received something, I replied. Good or bad, uncertain. I handed her the letter. She read it slowly. When she finished, she looked at me with a kind of quiet approval. He's growing, she said. He's uncomfortable. That's the same thing. I didn't answer immediately. Do you believe him? She asked. Yes, I said carefully, but belief and restoration are not the same. She smiled faintly. You're not softening. I'm stabilizing. That evening I called attorney James Whitmore. Not because I planned to change anything, because I needed clarity. If behavioral reconciliation occurs, I asked him, what safeguards remain? Full legal control remains yours, he said calmly. Any amendments require voluntary, documented consent. And if emotional pressure resurfaces, then nothing changes unless you allow it. I exhaled slowly. I won't. I didn't think you would. After we hung up, I walked to the hallway where David Caldwell's photograph still hung. My late husband had not been a perfect man, but he had understood something about strength that I was only now learning at 67. Love without backbone becomes surrender. I touched the edge of the frame lightly. You would have hated that night, I murmured softly, but I also knew something else. David would not have wanted me to become hard. He would have wanted me steady. 3 days later, Ethan asked to meet, public place. A small cafe halfway between my home and his rental. That detail alone told me something had shifted. When I arrived, he was already seated. No Brianna, no Patricia, just him. He stood when I approached. Thank you for coming. I chose to, he nodded. We ordered coffee. Small talk lasted exactly 40 seconds, then he said it. I'm learning something uncomfortable, which is, I've always responded to whoever was strongest in the room. I let that settle. You were strong when I was young, he continued. Then Brianna became strong, then Patricia. I thought aligning with strength meant safety. And what did you learn? That strength without integrity is manipulation. That was not a sentence he would have spoken 6 months ago. And intimidation? I asked. His jaw tightened slightly. Was fear, not power. I didn't soften my expression. You locked me inside my own home. Yes, you took my phone. Yes, you threatened isolation. Yes, he didn't look away. That will never be minimized, I said quietly. I know, he swallowed. I don't expect forgiveness. Good, he looked up. I expect accountability. That, I said calmly, is possible. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he surprised me again. I moved into a smaller rental alone. My eyes narrowed slightly. Alone, yes. And Brianna, with Patricia. Temporary separation, that was not small. She didn't support therapy, he added quietly. No, I said, she wouldn't. She says you manipulated the situation. Of course she does. He didn't defend her, that was new. I'm not asking you to choose sides, he said carefully. I'm choosing clarity. I studied him carefully. Clarity has consequences. I know, and some of them won't be reversible. I know. The repetition wasn't defiance, it was recognition. When we stood to leave, he hesitated. May I visit next Sunday? Under one condition. He waited. No discussion of inheritance, no strategic conversations, no agenda. He nodded immediately. Just dinner. Just dinner. Sunday arrived quietly. I prepared a simple meal, nothing elaborate, nothing symbolic, just food. When Ethan arrived, he looked lighter, not fixed, just less guarded. We ate at the same table where so many tensions had once lived, but something was different. He asked about my garden, about David, about Helen. He listened, not politely, actually listened. Halfway through dinner, he said something I did not expect. I don't want your money. I placed my fork down carefully. Be precise. I don't want control through inheritance. And what do you want? To be someone you're not afraid of. That landed deeper than apology ever could. I am not afraid of you, I said quietly. You were. Yes, he nodded. I don't want to be that man. I held his gaze steadily. Then don't be. After he left, I sat alone at the table for a long time, not in sadness, in evaluation. Growth is not a single gesture. It is pattern, and patterns take time. Later that week, Officer Ramirez called. Just checking in, he said. No further contact issues? No, I replied. It has been calm. Good, if anything shifts, you know the process. I do, and that was the difference now. I was not relying on emotion to protect me. I had structure, documentation, boundaries. Weeks passed. Ethan continued therapy. His visits remained consistent. No financial requests, no veiled comments, just presence. Brianna did not return. Patricia remained silent. One evening, Ethan lingered by the door. She asked if I'd convinced you to reconsider the estate. And I told her it wasn't her concern. That was not a small statement. And what did she say? That I've changed. I allowed myself the faintest smile. You have. He hesitated. If I continue, if I rebuild, will you ever reconsider? I did not answer immediately. Trust is not inherited, I said carefully. It is demonstrated. He nodded. How long? As long as it takes. And for the first time, he didn't look discouraged by that. He looked resolved. After he left, I walked through my home slowly. No tension, no fear, no watchfulness, only awareness. I did not know if Ethan's transformation would hold. I did not know whether Brianna would attempt another maneuver. I did not know what the future of my family would look like. But I knew this: no one would ever again decide it for me. And the woman who had once trembled at the sound of a door locking behind her now held every key. The first frost came quietly that year. It settled over the garden just before dawn, turning the edges of the roses silver. I stood at the kitchen window with my coffee, watching the light stretch slowly across the yard. David once insisted on mowing himself, even when his knees had begun to ache. There is something about cold mornings that clarifies things. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just stillness that tells the truth. It had been 3 months since Ethan locked that door behind me. 3 months since I heard the click of the deadbolt and understood that love without boundaries becomes vulnerability. 3 months since he thought fear would move me. It hadn't. It had steadied me. Ethan's visits had become consistent, not frequent enough to overwhelm, not rare enough to feel strategic. He came on Sundays. He stayed for dinner. He left without asking for anything. The first time he arrived with groceries instead of an appetite, I noticed. The second time he brought a replacement phone, unprompted, unopened, still in its packaging, I noticed that too. I know you don't need it, he said quietly. But I broke the last one. You did, I replied calmly. I can't undo that. No, but I can stop pretending it didn't happen. That mattered more than apology. Brianna had not returned. Patricia Green had sent exactly one email, polished, carefully worded, suggesting that familial tensions often escalate unnecessarily and that perhaps professional mediation could restore long-term harmony. I did not reply. Harmony without accountability is decoration. I was no longer decorating dysfunction. One afternoon, attorney James Whitmore requested a brief meeting. Nothing urgent, he assured me over the phone. Just procedural clarity. When I arrived at his office, he slid a folder toward me. I've updated the trust structure to include a behavioral clause, he said calmly. A behavioral clause. Yes. It allows for gradual reinstatement contingent on sustained conduct over a defined period. How long? 2 years minimum. I considered that. And who defines sustained? You do. The simplicity of that settled something inside me. For decades, I had defined love as sacrifice. Now I was defining it as consistency. I won't rush, I said. I didn't expect you would. When I returned home, Helen Brooks was waiting at the fence. You look thoughtful, she observed. I made a decision. Good one, a measured one, she smiled. That's your new language. Yes, I said softly, it is. That Sunday, I asked Ethan to stay after dinner. He looked almost nervous. I've structured something, I said, placing the folder on the table between us. His eyes flickered, not greedy, not anxious, just alert. I'm not restoring anything, I continued. I'm outlining a possibility. He nodded slowly. Read it? He took his time. That too was new. When he finished, he placed the papers down gently. 2 years, he said. Yes. No manipulation, no financial dependency. No pressure, yes. And if I fail, then nothing changes. He sat back in his chair. That's fair. I watched him carefully. You're not angry. No, why? Because for the first time this feels earned, not assumed. He folded his hands. I don't want your money to fix me. It won't. I want to deserve being your son again. That was the first time he had phrased it that way, not entitlement, not inheritance, identity. You cannot rewrite that night, I said quietly. I know, you cannot erase what you did. I know, but you can ensure it never defines you, he swallowed. That's what I'm trying to do. I believed him, not blindly, not emotionally. But rationally, patterns had shifted, tone had shifted, responsibility had shifted, and most importantly, he no longer spoke in Brianna's voice. 2 weeks later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Brianna had formally filed for separation. Patricia had reportedly called Ethan naive and easily influenced. That irony did not escape me. He came to dinner that Sunday with heavier eyes but steadier posture. I signed the separation papers, he said quietly. Are you certain? Yes. Why? He hesitated. Because I realized I was measuring success by control instead of character. That was not language borrowed from therapy, that was language integrated. And what do you measure now? I asked. Integrity? I allowed myself a faint smile. Good. We ate quietly, not strained, not celebratory, just steady. After he left, I walked through my house slowly, the hallway, the kitchen. The living room where the broken phone had once scattered across the floor. I had repaired that wall myself. The mark had faded, the memory had not, and that was intentional. Forgetting is not healing. Remembering without bitterness is. Later that evening, I sat at my desk and wrote a letter, not to Ethan, to myself, a simple statement. You survived without shrinking. I placed it in the drawer beneath David's old watch, because survival was not the victory. Self-respect was. 3 months turned into 6. 6 into 9. Consistency held, no dramatic gestures, no manipulative tears, no financial requests, just quiet rebuilding. On the 1-year anniversary of that night, Ethan arrived earlier than usual. He stood in the doorway longer than necessary. Do you remember the date? He asked softly. Yes, I do too. He stepped inside. I can't believe I thought locking a door would solve anything. It revealed something, I said calmly. What? That fear is the last tool of someone losing control. He nodded slowly. I was losing control. Yes, and you didn't panic. No, why? Because I had already prepared for the possibility that you might try. He absorbed that. You always saw further than I did. No, I corrected gently. I simply stopped ignoring what was in front of me. We sat at the table again, the same house, different dynamic. I don't expect restoration, he said quietly. But I'm grateful for structure. Structure is safety, I replied. And freedom? Freedom is choosing not to abuse it. He nodded. When he left that night, he paused at the door. Thank you for not destroying me. I looked at him steadily. I didn't need to. The next morning, I walked through my home one more time. The locks were mine, the documents were mine, the decisions were mine. But more than that, the fear was no longer mine. I had not won a battle, I had not crushed my son, I had not staged revenge. I had done something far quieter. I had refused to be cornered in my own life. And when Ethan thought I had no way out, he learned something he will carry much longer than fear. He learned that the woman he tried to contain was never powerless, only patient.